If you go through something really big, you don't immediately jump into solution. You often say, wait, I got to think this through. Wait a minute. I got to think about this. And I think that's where the American people have been. It's like, wait, we got to think about this. The problem is that we're on the wrong road, because we've been sold that it's almost like a Wizard of Oz quality. You have to be one of them, like a Wizard of Oz. But then you realize, no, the wizard was just this guy with a mask on. We got to tear down the curtain. I'm reminded of a line from Franklin Roosevelt where he said that the primary responsibility of the presidency is not administrative, but moral vision, moral leadership.
I have this theory, having been close to it, been burnt by it, and came into it relatively naive, which is hard for me to admit. You like to think of yourself as street smart and seasoned, but the world of politics is so different, at least in my opinion, than the world of business. There are different incentives, different angles of attack. But I feel like the American leadership now has totally lost the plot. They're there in this sort of fever bed of capitalism and cronyism, where lobbyists are paying them to do certain things. They only respond to you if you have money, bags of money. And if you have bags of money, you can get things done like put fertilizer into our food, overly process our food, add food dyes and different things to our food that you couldn't get done in a place like Europe, for example. Big Pharma has its way now with the FDA. The military industrial complex, we are running wars now, 50 years worth of wars. These wars are great for a very small group of people at the top, and they are very ungreat for the rest of the people, particularly the lower and middle class. And oh, by the way, if you're super wealthy and you get in trouble, it's no problem. We're going to lower interest rates, and we're going to give you unlimited amounts of capital from our treasury, so your bank can survive or you can stay rich. But we won't do that for the middle or lower income people. But what we do for them, though, is we cripple them with inflation and devaluation of our money. So if you're getting paid with your time and energy is going towards work, as opposed to you owning assets, the dollar that we put in your pocket is worth 92 cents a year later, and it makes it harder and harder for you to catch up. And so what have I missed, Marianne? Tell me what I've missed, or did I get that wrong? These are all public servants that are serving the American public, and the policies that they're coming up with are actually working for the average American.
You were 100% correct. And the only thing that I would modify was your first sentence. You said they've lost the plot. No, they haven't. They've changed the plot. They have changed the plot from democracy to oligarchy, because everything that you just described is an oligarchic system. You described a system in which relatively few people with a lot of money get to govern according to their goal, which is short-term profit maximization for themselves. And that is at the expense of democracy. And you described that situation perfectly. I think it's letting them off the hook too easily to say they've lost the plot. They have intentionally changed the plot, and they continue to do so. And they would have the American people think that qualified leadership is people qualified in maintaining and perpetuating what is essentially that scam.
Okay, so I ask people about you all the time. I say, well, what if somebody like Marianne Williamson was to run the government? And invariably, people say that would be wonderful if we had somebody like Marianne Williamson, because you would be doing it to serve people. You would not be doing it to serve yourself. I mean, I've read your books. I understand where you're coming from a spiritual point of view, and where you're coming from a human welfare point of view, and from a place of kindness. So I don't want to be overly cynical, but I want to just point this out. Why can't somebody like you crack through those atmospherics? Like, where if you asked 80% of the American people, I really don't want demented or dementia. I would like to have somebody that, cares about where we're going and would be focused on right or wrong. Okay, so go ahead. What am I getting wrong? Why can't we get somebody like you to break through that haze, if you will?
First of all, we can, but we're going to have to rise to the challenge. I think the majority of people, Anthony, are just processing all of this. I think a critical mass on both left and right are, as we speak, waking up to what you've said here, what I've agreed with about the depth of corruption that now infuses our political system, and waking up to the fact that the institutional realities, namely public parties, which we were brought up to believe could be trusted to protect and expand our democratic pillars, are in fact the very problem in too many cases. So I think there has not been apathy. I think there's been confusion and an almost paralysis. But this is no different than in our own personal lives. If you go through something really big, you don't immediately jump into solution. You often say, wait, I got to think this through. Wait a minute. I got to think about this. And I think that's where the American people have been. It's like, wait, we got to think about this. No, we can't have her. We can't have her because she doesn't have all the, she's not a political car mechanic. And then you realize, well, no, but the problem is that we're on the wrong road. So that doesn't have to do with the political car mechanic. Well, could she actually do that? And then we go there because we've been sold that it's almost like a Wizard of Oz quality. You have to be one of them, like a Wizard of Oz. But then you realize, no, the wizard was just this guy with a mask on. We got to tear down the curtain. I'm reminded of a line from Franklin Roosevelt where he said that the primary responsibility of the presidency is not administrative, but moral vision. Moral leadership. And even when you say, can she run the government? The most important aspect of running the government at this moment is aligning the values that dominate policy back to our original values as articulated in the Declaration of Independence, which Lincoln said was an eternal rebuke to forces of tyranny and oppression. Right now, we're living in a country which is dominated by a system of economic tyranny. That is what you described. It's economic tyranny, except for a few people. So we don't need someone who's been for years involved in that system to continue to drive the car, so much as we need to disrupt that system, because the status quo will not disrupt itself.